and hopefully I don't blow us all up trying to do the Facebook thing. So just bear with me. There's the feed. One of these days I'll work out the Instagram feed, but it needs some special coding. I'm not clever enough to work it out. The Facebook feed is okay, right. Okay. With a bit of luck, it's working. Right. I'm going to shut that down because I can't stand looking at myself. All right, so we're now live stream. About 4 minutes to go.
Perfect.
I was super interested in your vintage notes in terms of especially 15 and 16 and how the similarities that you drew between the two. I'm really looking forward to you walking us through that actually.
Yes, yes. They are very similar in terms of the the blending, but when you taste the wines, you will find out that it's not the same thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't want to spoil anything.
No.
Just...
I've actually got quite a few questions, but I'm going to shut up until 5:30 at least. Were these tubes sealed with argon?
Well, yes, the first batch we have done is already finished. I have only 2. And we are going to produce a new ones when we have the 2018 release.
Cool.
So the idea is that we will move forward to do 16, 17, and 18.
All right.
So that's how we would like to move with this plant. It works really good. People get very interested about the tasting, the vertical, but also the way that this packed. And well, I think it's a great opportunity since we cannot travel and I cannot have the chance to, well, so far until let's say half of this year, maybe if everything goes well, crossing fingers, Singapore and Hong Kong, they are talking about to do this bubble travel. So I think it will be the first country where from Hong Kong we can visit. From Argentina, forget about it. It's
going to be a long time, I guess, right?
And now they are going through to this vaccination plan, but it will take time until everybody is having the vaccine. And what I heard, these people is going to have a kind of a certificate that you have already the vaccine, like a passport, like a digital passport or something, like, or a certification. So let's see, hopefully next year, but it depends on other countries and how they are moving forward with this situation.
Well, I read yesterday that Singapore Airlines is trialing that digital passport concept. They'll be the first airline to start some form of it. It wasn't clear just what technology they're adopting, but I understand that that's about to happen, which is quite exciting. It's quite good to know that at least it's a step in the right direction.
Yes, yes, that's very good news.
Hmm. Well, we're at 5:30, so let's kick off. Everything's being recorded, so in case people are late or can't make the actual timing, we'll send the YouTube link out later. So, Tamara, thanks so much. After lots of stops and starts trying to get this tasting organized, I think it's been about 6 months worth of effort.
Yeah, I was
On your
seeing
side.
our mails today. It was we start talking around mid of October of
Yes,
2020, something
crazy.
like that.
But finally you're here, and thank you so much for allowing us to have a look at your wines. So I'm going to hand over
My
to
pleasure.
you to walk us through the presentation. And guys, I would encourage you to just have a sniff and a taste of the three wines as we're going through it. Tamara has some fairly detailed vintage notes for all 3 years, but she'll talk us through that.
Yes. Okay. Thank you so much for everybody who joined today in this virtual Zoom tasting. It's a really pleasure for me to go through the vintage report and the characteristics of every of these beautiful Nicolas Catena from the 15 to the 17. So it's a really honor for me to go through all this material, and thank you the guys from Wine Exchange Asia that they are able to, you know, to bring the kits for everybody so you can taste at the same time we are talking. That's the most important thing, because we can go through many details about Argentina, about, for example, how the wines are made and everything, but what is the most important for us value is that you can taste the wines. So we create this project due to this regulation that is not possible to travel. So what we have done is produce these kits in Holland. There is a company that we ship all the wines from to them, and they make all the fractionations about it in every tube. But also we hire another laboratory to control the quality of the wines after it was fractionated. So if you can see when you open it, is a screw cap, and also is filled with a little bit of argon gas, the same gas that you can find in the Coravin machines, for example, the capsules. So the idea is that we try to prevent the oxidation of these tubes. So feel free to open it and then pour for you the glasses. We are going to start from the 15. We are moving next to 16, and we finish with the 17. It's very good if you have all the glasses pour at the same time, because first 17 and 16 needs a bit more time to open up, but second because it's really fun that you taste side by side and compare. That's the idea for this tasting. I'm going to share my screen, and we are going to start with the presentation. Let me see. Can you see well the screen?
Yeah, it's perfect.
Okay. I can do it a bit bigger if you want. Let me know
Okay.
how do you prefer. But if I do bigger, I cannot. Yes, I can see you. Perfect. Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay. So my name is Tamara. I didn't introduce myself. I was talking about the wine. So I'm the brand ambassador for the Catena Zapata family. I'm a sommelier. I was studying, I'm from Argentina, first of all, which is very important, from Buenos Aires. And I lived in Hong Kong since 6 years. So I'm in charge of Asia, and I'm trying to connect with many people as possible in Asia to communicate our wines. Well, it was a long journey in the hospitality industry, but at the same time, I was studying the sommelier in the WSET. I'm doing now the diploma, so I'm, doing my certifications on diploma, and also I study in the court of master sommelier, and I did the level 1 and level 2. So very passionate about wines, and I think that's what we are going to go through today. Okay, so let me do an introduction on the family, because I think it's very important to start talking about how this family make a revolution in Argentina in terms of quality, in terms of putting Argentina as a wine region, as to vinify wines. And this family actually started in 1902 in Argentina. So nowadays we have four generations that the vineyards and the winery belongs to them in all this long process and time. So the first generation arrived, Nicola, Catena, from Le Marche from Italy. So they bring the culture and they bring all the knowledge to vinify wines. And also they established the winery in 1902. So it means that this family is producing wines for more than 100 years. So are one of the oldest families producing wines in Argentina. And I truly believe that they have made a huge revolution in terms of Argentina's quality, in terms of quality, but also in terms of how they benefit the area, how they work constantly to elevate the area in terms of quality, in terms of knowledge, also trying to preserve the nature. And I don't know if you heard, but just at beginning of February, we have published one article in Nature, which is actually a scientist magazine. So we have an institute, a research institute at the winery, the Catena Institute of Wine, that was founded by Laura Catena, the fourth generation. And one of the study is focused on how the terroir is truly shown in the wines. So they made a study of 3 different vintages, similar to what we are going to do today, but they went through through all the chemical compounds and the phenolics and everything, and they I don't know how to say, they prove, sorry, that the terroir is something that they can chemically show in the wines. So well, you can go through and read the article. It's very interesting and very long article, and that's what is important to highlight, is that what we were talking about long time ago about the parcels, about the vineyards, about the Cruz in Argentina, and the Adriana vineyard as a South American Grand Cru, it is shown in a scientist way that the terroir exists, and is a very important component to preserve the nature. So Nicolas Catena, third generation of the family, he studied in Columbia University as an economist. He was helping his father for many years in the winery until he became the person who was leading the winery of the family. So he were living in California for many years. At the same time, he kept the winery in Argentina, and he was studying there the revolution, the Californian revolution that it happens at the end of the 80s. And then he was given, lessons as a teacher, as a professor in the University of California. And at the meantime, he was visiting different producers, and he has the chance to meet, for example, Robert Mondavi. So he was really impressed about the Cabernet Sauvignon and the Chardonnay, how they develop these 2 grape varieties. And also he was a witness to see how the Californian wines get outstanding comparison with Bordeaux wines. So that's the moment that he realized that in Argentina we have a beautiful terroir that can really produce wines, and he started having a dream, which is produce wines that can compete with the best of the world. So that's the revolution that happened when he go back to Argentina. He understands that to make a good quality wine, he needs to bring technology that it doesn't exist in Argentina before, like barriques, like irrigation system, or different kind of presses or tanks. So that's one of the things why we consider Nicolas Catena as a pioneer in this wine region, and he also helped other producers to elevate the quality. So that's the first thing why we consider him as a pioneer. But the second thing why we consider him as a pioneer is because he understands, after talking with different winemakers in France, because the other side of the Cabernet Sauvignon is in Bordeaux. So he traveled to France and he were talking with other producers, and he find out that the Cabernet Sauvignon, or the finesse of the wines, is related with the high altitude. So that's the other revolution he made. He started planting vineyards where nobody planted before in Argentina. So because of these 2 reasons, are why Nicolas Catena is so famous or so regarded about other producers and the critics of wines that we can see, for example, in this slide. So how Robert Parker or Jancis Robinson or Stephen Tenzer, they are talking about the wines that this family produce. And, you know, they are highlighting how they put Argentina in the world map. So it's very interesting to see how they recognize. And they, for example, Robert Parker compared the 2004 vintage of Nicolas Catena as equivalent of, for example, a wine of Lafite Rochelle. So the spirit of Nicolas Catena wine, I'll show you one of the bottles I have here with me, the 2016. So how born this wine? The first vintage was in 1997. So can you imagine, when we talk about all the Bordeaux wines and these outstanding wines from France are having a long history. That's one of the reasons why we are called New World against the old world, that they have the history and the traditions and many years of difference in comparison. So saying that, 1997 was the first one, and now we are having the 2017 was the last vintage release. So 20 years of experience on this wine is a very short time, but the wines were performing outstanding year through year, and it's really impressive how we could reach any seller of the most important wine collectors around the world. So this is the dream of Nicolas, that slowly it became true. And also Laura Catena is his daughter, is the person who decided and helped his father, because he has a passion and love for Cabernet Sauvignon grape. So when they decide to put a name to this wine, they decide that the name should be his own name. So it's an honor to Nicolas Catena for all the trajectory and the story, the men behind this wine. So we talk about the family, but now we are moving forward to the history of Argentina, and this is very interesting for you to know. What it makes this region so particular is that the soils that we have in Mendoza, in the areas that maybe you heard about Luján de Cuyo, or you heard about Uco Valley. So these two very famous areas in Argentina, the soil composition here, it's stones, very big rocks, limestone. We have a lot of sand, we have a lot of clay and silt, but it's not all the areas the same type of soil. So in the flat areas, we have so much more clay and silt. In the middle part, when we are going through next to the mountains, we have so much more sand. And in the bottom part of the foothills of the Andes, we have so much more big rocks, and we have so much more limestone component in the soil. And let me explain you why this is this happened. Around 150 millions of years ago, the Andes, it doesn't exist, and all that area were covered by the ocean. So around 20 millions of years ago, when all the planktonic, the plaque in the oceans, they start to hit each other. So the Andes arise, and all the components and the marine deposit gets in the very, very bottom part of this area. And the second thing is, you can see on the right hand picture, there is a very dark dot that it reflect like a fan. So it's like a triangle. So it means that the tip of the triangle, which is in the foothills of the Andes, it becomes like a valley, right? So all the erosion of the air that come from the top of the mountains are helping to move all the rocks. So that's the main reason why we have bigger rocks in the just next to the foothills of the Andes, and then in the flat areas we are having more sand and clay and silt. Saying that, what they have in common, this area with the famous area of Bordeaux, where the most iconic wines came from, is that we have a lot of limestone and gravel component in Argentina. But what we don't have in common is the altitude and the rain. So this is very important because Mendoza is an area where it doesn't rain so much, around 300 millimeters of water we can get from the rain per year. So it's considered as a desert. So it means we need to use irrigation systems to provide water enough for the grapes to fully ripe and develop. But not only for the grapes, it's anything we want to grow up in this land needs to have an extra help with water. The second thing about the minerality is not only because of the marine deposits, it's also because we use for the irrigations, we use the snow smelt. So we have in Mendoza a system of different channels to conduct the water, to maximize the water, and that water has a big component of calcium carbonate, which is a type of a component of a limestone. If you have any doubt or if you want to make any questions, you can do the questions in the chat, or also you can raise your hand and just interrupt me, and I'll be happy.
Well, the first question I've had from somebody is, can we get more of 15 and 16? The general feeling from the private chats is the wines are looking amazing, but we'll talk about that at the end.
Yes, I think 16 it will be so much easier to get more vintages. 15, as soon as we are getting the new vintage release, it becomes a bit more difficult or more limited to get 15 or even though back vintages. So it's a challenge, but that's why we encourage people to have 17, 16 and the new ones, because these wines are very promising and you can age these wines easily for 20 years. And we are making this, we are actually making the story of this wine because only has 20 years of since it born. And then one more thing that I want to highlight from this map, because it's very easy to see, are the meters, the altitude, because that's one of the most important things why these wines from this area are so unique. If you heard, we have in Argentina the highest vineyards in the world. That happened in Salta, north of the Argentina, not Mendoza, but Mendoza also has a very high altitude comparison with other vineyards in the world. So 500 meters, it will be the lower part, the flat part in this area. Not really, we don't have grapes for Nicolas Catena wine. Then we have 900 meters. Yes, at this stage, we have a lot of Cabernet Sauvignon that we use for this wine. And then 1,500 meters. That's the highest spot possible to vinify or to do viticulture in Mendoza. And this is in Uco Valley. All right, let me move. So talking about the altitude, I jump into temperature. So we said the soils, and second, we said the altitude is the second factor why this area is so unique and produce outstanding wines. But the third character is the temperature. Why? Because let's say in the flat area and 500 meters and then 1,500 meters, we have a very short distance. If we would like to travel, for example, from, let's say this example, in France, we are in Champagne and if we would like to go to Rhone Valley. To get that difference of temperature, we need to drive in a car around 6-7 hours. Depends how fast you drive, but it's around 5 hours, let's say. If we are in the flat area in Mendoza, where it's so much more warm temperature, okay? And then we want to go to the highest spot, we drive in a car around 30 minutes, 40 minutes maximum. What it means that the temperature, as soon as we are getting higher, is dropping a lot. So one of the things why the temperature drop between distances, but the other factor is between day and night. So during the day, Mendoza is a very sunny and warm area, but during nighttime, it's very cold. So we have a drop of around 18 to 20 degrees temperature down very fast. So that's something that, if we have a lot of sunlight in Mendoza, because we have altitude, how are we going to balance that? If we have so much more sunlight exposure to these grapes, how come these wines are so delicate or so refined? And the key point is exactly that: altitude and temperature difference. And this is something that it doesn't happen in so many places. So that's why it's linked to terroir. Yes.
Yeah, I'm really amazed by the fact that the difference between your zone 1 and zone 4 is
Yes.
zone 1 being Burgundian and zone 4 being Chateauneuf, 75 kilometers apart. So you have this incredible cross section of old world terroir, but in a relatively small area, which is very,
Yes,
very
exactly. That's very important to understand. So this chart, the name of this chart is a Winkler classification of wine regions. So the Winkler classification, it doesn't include Gualtallarí or Mendoza. It was made for international areas. We decided to add it in the same sum up of temperature in the ripening season, which is the column number 3. Okay, so and then the altitude comparison with, for example, Champagne, or comparison. This is not about the altitude; it's comparison about the temperature. Okay, so in Champagne we have the same summarize of temperature equal to Gualtallarí, and Burgundy and Champagne are located in the level 1. It means that is the cold region. So it means the top of the Uco Valley, Gualtallarí, where the Malbec and the Cabernet Sauvignon for Nicolas Catena comes from, is a very cold classification. Okay, because I'm explaining this because people think that in Argentina we are a warm climate, and sorry to say, but not really. It's not wrong to say yes, we have some regions that are warm, but we have very high altitude where we have a very cold temperature, which is great to get that finesse in the tannins. And we have this altitude that also it's really beneficial to get a very good balance between all the phenolics, the acidity. So altitude and cool climate is equal to high acidity, and that's the answer why these wines are really great. They have a combination between flavor, very good texture on the tannins, and a great acidity. Any questions so far about this?
Nope.
Good. All right. Oof. This is this is so fun. Okay. Argentina is saying, or Catena Zapata is saying, that the Nicolas Catena is an original Bordeaux blend. So here is the facts. Why we said that is an original Bordeaux blend? Because in the Encyclopedia Britannica, the 9th edition, it was in 1875. So we have records, we have a statement where it says, and it proved that the Malbec were planted, and they use a lot of Malbec to source for the Bordeaux blends. So, and then we have another statement by Gerald Asher. This is an American journalist, but also he were including some quotes that it's saying like why the Malbec, or the role of the Malbec into the blend, what are the benefits of this. So I would like to go back to very long history, and many of you heard about the phylloxera. So when it was 1855, the classification of the chateaus in Bordeaux, where they classified from the 1st to the 5th, in there they selected the best chateaus from Bordeaux. And at that time, the vineyards were planted between 60 and 40% of Malbec. And then after phylloxera, they replanted the Malbec for Merlot, because Merlot has it was more suitable for the American rootstock. So that's one of the key points why we don't have nowadays, or after phylloxera, we can't find a lot of Malbec, or the reason why all those famous chateaux, they didn't include any more Malbec. Malbec is a ripening grape. It's a late ripening grape. And you know that in Bordeaux, we have a lot of rain. So the point is that the Merlot were so much better in terms of the production, how it adapted to this new situation with American roots, American rootstock, and they decide to replace, because Merlot is a bit more shorter in the cycle of ripening. And the reason why they put Malbec, or now Merlot, is to soften the tannins of the Cabernet Sauvignon. So the Merlot or Malbec give that more bold, more fruitiness, and then more silky and velvety tannins. So that's the reason. So after phylloxera, and you remember after the Second War, many immigrants moved from the Europe to Argentina or to New or United States, but we receive a lot of Italians and we receive a lot of Spanish people. So they bring the material, they bring itself the grape. You know, when it was introduced the Malbec in Argentina, it was in 1852. So 3 years before the classification. It gets into Chile first and then moved to Argentina. They bring it to Argentina. So we have very old vineyards of Malbec, and the Catena Institute of Wines that I talked a bit at the beginning, they made a couple of studies comparing the genetic Malbec we have in Mendoza against the Malbec that is in Cahors, where it was the town where Malbec born, in southwest of Bordeaux. So this study proves that the Malbecs that we have in Argentina are very small berries, very small bunches, compact, and low yield production. Since the Malbec that is nowadays in Cahors, or the leftover that is there in Bordeaux, but mostly you will find in Cahors, is Côte. The name is Côte, so it has so much more bigger bunches and bigger grapes and bigger bunches, and it's more productive. So we can prove and we can certify that the Malbec that we have is the old one that used to be part of the first yes, Prephyloxera Malbec. Yep. And the second thing why it's so great in Argentina is because it has their own systems of roots. So that's awesome. It doesn't have American rootstock. We had phylloxera, but they combat it, and it's not the same exactly and so aggressive as it happened in the past in Europe. And also Cabernet Sauvignon is a pre-phylloxera genetic material. So this is something very interesting to consider, and it's talking about the quality of the vines, but also of the wines at the end. All right, so here is saying about what I explained right now. So these grapes has a history of 170 years. The Cabernet Sauvignon that we have is very old. And then from one of the ancient vineyards that we have, that it was planted in 1930, the Catena Institute of Wines, they made a massal selection that they replanted. They made a selection of the best plants, the best performing plants, and they selected in the new vineyards of the family. We have six own vineyards in different areas. Okay. Now we are starting with focusing on the wines itself. But any questions so far? What we talked before?
Nothing in private chat at this point. Let's dive into these wines.
Okay, cool. So 1997 was the first vintage. In 2001, it was a tasting that it happened it was a blind tasting that they made in London, New York, Boston, Washington, and Miami. The panel of tasters that did this activity was Francis Robinson, Oz Clark, Hugh Johnson, and Thomas. So a very important critics of wine taste together Nicolas Catena 1997, Wicamus 1997, Haute Brion 1997, and it's missing one, Latour, yes, an Opus 1. So we have a couple of very famous Bordeaux wines, United States also, and then this wine from Argentina. All of them 1997. And you know, the results were impressive. Nicolas Catena Zapata, the first vintage, was chosen in first or second position in the 5 different cities where they did the blind tasting by these people. So this is some, you know, important facts that maybe if you need to search about it, and but it's not something that you are going to know easily. So that's the introduction I like to do about this wine. Okay, so let me see. I think I have here the 17. So let me go to the 15. Here is 15. Okay, why I'm saying that I want you guys to try 15 first? Because the 15, first of all, the blend is 83% Cabernet Sauvignon, 17% Malbec. Okay, so here also about the vintage report. The vintage report is saying that 15 was an unusual vintage because we have so much more rain than average, and it was a very rainy comparison with the rest. Not rainy as it could be in Bordeaux, because you know in Bordeaux rains a lot. That's a fact that happened in this area. But in Argentina or Mendoza, it's not common to have a lot of rain. And what's the problem with the rain? If we have, for example, close to the harvest season, the grapes can be a bit more diluted, the flavors, but at the end, they could manage. They harvest very well. They have a reduction of in terms of the yields for this vintage. And what is very important is also to talk about where these grapes are coming from. La Pirámide is, if anybody of you saw any picture of Catena, let me see if I have, well, you can see on the label. On the label you have like the pyramid, which is the winery. So around the winery, we have a lot of vineyards and very old vineyards of Cabernet Sauvignon. And that's Agrelo, Luján de Cuyo. That's the best, one of the best places to grow Cabernet Sauvignon. In here we have, you can see the picture, it's a bit more compact, the soil, and this is because we have more sand, clay, and silt. If you
certainly the nose, if you look at the phenolics of these three, Tamara, very clearly 15 is talking about Cabernet more than anything else. It's the one that's the most easily confused with a left bank Cabernet from Bordeaux.
Yes.
The Malbec is just jumping out of the glass in the 16 and 17. It's not holding back, and it's interesting to see how a difference of 17%, and I think the others are about 35 or something like that. So basically all you've done is taken just that extra 20 or 15%, and it makes such a dramatic difference to the wine.
Yes, really. I will say that for many years, it was more dominant in Cabernet Sauvignon, and it happened once that it achieved 50% Cabernet, 50% Malbec, and that was the point where Nicolas Catena said to his team, hold on, guys.
Yeah, you got to rethink
the
this.
pinnacle of the Nicolas Catena is Cabernet Sauvignon. So you can do whatever you want with the other wines that we have on the family, that they really focus on Malbec, but not with this wine. So after that, they go back and put 60 Cabernet, 70 Cabernet, or they play with this blending, right?
Yeah.
But it don't have to overpower the Cabernet. I mean, it depends on how the vintage performing. If they decide to put a bit more Cabernet, a bit more Malbec, and that's the main reason. Yes.
Hasheng is asking us a question that probably segues into this. The introduction of Cabernet Franc, is that to once again bolster the effects of the Cabernet fruit itself, instead of letting the Malbec dominate the wine?
The Cabernet Franc, it's a very tiny percentage, it's 8%, and the winemaker Fernando Buscema, he was I don't know if you heard about the winery that we have in the partnership we have with Lafite, that is Caro. Okay, so Fernando Buscema was a winemaker for Caro for around 20 years, right? So we have Alejandro Vigil, which is the chief winemaker, and then Fernando Busema, since 2016, start to be the leading winemaker for Nicolas. So the decision to bring Cabernet Franc to the 2016 came by the hand of Fernando Busema, because he worked training a lot in France, and also doing a lot of harvest and helping in the season harvest to Lafite. So he decided to add a bit of the Cabernet Franc to give a little bit more of the herbaceous side, but more delicate, and florals also.
I guess it forms similar tasks to what Petit Verdot sometimes is used for in Bordeaux, just to give that slightly edgy, more fragrant component to the wine.
For example, Cabernet Sauvignon can give more like roasted bell peppers, or quite more roasted aromas, like the herbaceous, but more roasted. And then the Cabernet Franc gives more freshness, like herbaceous, but freshness. So I think that's the decision why he chose to incorporate this Cabernet Franc. And we can see that 16 and 17 has 8%. Both of them has the same amount. I don't think the plan is to get more. I think it's coming just to bring an extra layers of freshness, but I'm not very sure that they are going to increase more, because should be based on Cabernet Sauvignon and Malbec.
All right. So maybe moving on to 16. Could we have a look
16,
and compare?
16 for me is awesome. I mean, I would say that 15 is more similar to back vintages of Nicolas Catena, but 16 I love it because it's very fresh, and I think it's a bit more shy. I think it has so much more to develop, to give. Yes. And what happened in this vintage? It was the coolest vintage for the last 30 years. So think about 15 was a bit more rainy, something that it never happened, and then 16 it was extremely cold. I will say that this this peak on the temperature is because of the global warming, the climate change, that we can tell that some unusual things start happening in different areas. And this is one characteristic of this vintage, that we cannot miss it. We cannot talk about it, because when you take the glass of the Cabernet Sauvignon from this vintage, you can feel that roastiness that I mentioned before, the roast peppers, is not really, it's more like green bell pepper, is so much more fresh. And then you have more freshness, floral, and the Malbec also is giving so much more fruit.
There's a kind of flamboyance to 16 that I really love. I guess that's my New World upbringing, but I really love that sort of swagger that the 16 has. It's gorgeous. And you're right, it's just peeking around the curtains. It's just showing what it's going to be like in 5 or 10 years. Really interesting.
Yes, and also I mean, there is also one thing that I really like for 16 is like acidity is very delicate, it's very sharp, also is still there, like for long time you feel. So that's why also I'm saying the potential of aging is great. I think 15 is a beautiful wine to drink now. You can age it for sure, but I'm thinking that 16 has the ability to age so much more than the 15. And
it's super interesting because this goes in a completely different direction to the way the Bordeaux wines are developing. The 15s are starting to look nice now, but I don't think that Bordeaux 16, just to take a stab at it as a generalization, I don't think will ever develop beyond the quality of the Bordeaux 15s. Whereas here, you're seeing a totally different game. The 16 is actually going to be the one that rewards much more over time.
You know what I'm thinking is, like, for me the 15 is so much more like the left bank, and the 16 or 17 is going on the right bank, because the having a bit more of Malbec and having that touch of Cabernet Franc, and like getting more soft and the powerful of the Cabernet Sauvignon, I think it's more that style. Don't get me wrong, I really like both of them. But if the collector, the wine collector, are fan of left bank, so probably 15 or maybe 4 or 2001, it will be your wine. If you are going into like Merlot and that very fruity,
and the Franc,
so I recommend 16 or 17.
So
but still being like a Bordeaux blend, we cannot avoid that. That's the spirit of the wine. Yeah,
no doubt. I'm also loving the lower alcohol. Below 14% is always a gift for me. As I get older, it's something that I enjoy more and more.
Let me check. Yes, you can see the here is 16 is 14%.
Yeah.
Wait, this is 16, right?
Yeah.
I cannot see well because I have let me move the panel of, 15. Yeah, I can say that the bottle shoot is 16. That's why it get me confused. But look, 15 is 14% alcohol. It makes sense because it was more warm. And this vintage that was rainy. But then if you see 16 is 13.6, so that's up because of the cool climate. And then 17 in terms of alcohol, it's a bit more than 16. 17 actually was influenced so much more with the El Nino, and this vintage was warmer than 16 but not rainy at 15. So I find that it was on the middle between the 15 and 16.
It's interesting because on the palate, the 17 is calmer. It's definitely more resolved and quieter. The tannins are finer. It's definitely a little shyer than 16 in terms of its characteristics right now.
Yeah, I need to say something very important. Look at this. This is the 3 crus that we use for the type of soil. This is very important. Nicasia cru is on the south of the Uco Valley. Here we have 1,050 meters over the level of the sea. From here we source Malbec and the Cabernet Franc. So this area, you can see the rocks. The rocks are very big, so it has a great drainage for the water. So we have so much more stress, water stress in this case. Adriana, the most important vineyard of the family, at 1,500 meters over the level of the sea. So you see there is so much more white, the rocks. Here is where we have a lot of calcium carbonate.
Right.
Here we have a lot. Also, you can find in Nicasia, but in this case, we have so much more marine deposits because of the altitude, okay? And then La Pirámide, I explained before why it's so compact, the sand, clay, and silt. And there is one difference, this is important for everybody to know, 17 is only having grapes from the highest altitude, not anymore the Pyramid. So we have Cabernet Sauvignon.
All right, that's interesting. Yeah.
Yes. So the Cabernet Sauvignon before were sourced from the Pyramid, this soil. Okay.
Yeah.
And this is 900 meters. Now, because it was a bit more warmer than 16, and we need to keep that finesse, acidity, and everything. So the winemaker decided to source the Cabernet Sauvignon from the best, the most important vineyard and the highest vineyard. So here we have Cabernet Sauvignon and Malbec, and we keep using Malbec and Cabernet Franc from Nicasia.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Yep, that was awesome. There's a question from Dave about why no Merlot. Dave, I think Tamara mentioned that earlier. They took a strategic decision that they wanted to echo pre-phylloxera Bordeaux, and they believed that Malbec was a better performer for this particular blend. I think that's right. Do I have it right?
Yes.
Tamara? Yeah. Okay.
And also because the Malbec that we have is the same, the pre-phylloxera Malbec. So that's why the quality of the grape and the juice that we have from this grape is really good. If we have to use Merlot, we don't have pre-phylloxera Merlot. So we cannot really compete with this quality. I think is that's the answer.
Yes. Carry on.
No.
I just wanted to share that last as a sort of the white shoe salesman in the room. I'm dying for you to show everybody the ratings performance of the Nicolas in comparison to.
Oh yes.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
let's go to, okay, this is the tradition very fast. This is Fernando Buscema, the person who started doing the wine making process. And I didn't talk about the wine making process. That's also very important. It's a very classic French winemaker, same as they do in Bordeaux. And they use also, for example, a lot of barriques, small barriques, is barrel fermented, but also they use oak, what's the name? Oak roll fermenters. So it's an structure of 500 liters barrique that is on a structure that you can move, you can roll it. So it helps to integrate very well the tannins and the flavors. So let's go back to the cruise. We harvest in different moments according as the grapes are ripen enough to be ready for the harvest. So we harvest and they also pass many times within the vineyard. After that, we vinify separately. Okay, so it's a barrel fermentation in a classic barrique or the 500 liters.
Yeah.
When we finish the fermentation, the wines will get established for 6 months, and then they do the blend. The night before they do the blend, they have this tradition. Laura Catena, Nicolas Catena, he is 80, he's going to get 81 years old, but he's very involved with this wine, not for all the wines, but this particular wine he do. So he participated on doing the blending session. So they like to do some kind of refreshing and open different chateaus and different Californian wines to get more inspiration before doing the blend for Nicolas. And here is the rating. So this is only Robert Parker. What we put is from the first vintage of Nicolas, 1997, to the last one, 2017. So we pick some of Italian wines and Chilean wines, also another colleagues from Argentina that produce and sell the wine through La Place de Bordeaux, like Cheval des Andes, and the most iconic wines. And I think maybe you are very familiarized with all of these names. Penfolds still being the number one, and this is an average of these scores. Maceto, second position. And for the person who asked about Merlot, I really encourage you to try Maceto, 100% Merlot. Amazing. It's so good. I love it.
I'm pretty sure Dave has already.
Okay. I love it. I really love that one. Nicolas Catena is in position number 3. Why we put this record? Why we would like to show this slide? Because our neighbors in Chile, Seña, Almaviva, Chadwick, Clos Apalta, they are working with La Place de Bordeaux for 20 years around, 15 years, 20 years, and we are only 3 years that we started distributing through La Place de Bordeaux. And Catena Zapata was the first winery from Argentina to be participating in this kind of distribution. After that, it follows by another colleagues like Cheval des Andes, or for example, Achal Ferrero as well, which is not included here. But many people around the world know Seña, Chadwick, Almaviva, and these iconic wines that are great and really good and based on Cabernet Sauvignon too. So for those people who are fanatic of these Chilean wines, I really recommend to try Nicolas Catena. I think you will love it.
Well, the interesting thing that comes out of this graph for me is the price of the Nicolas in comparison to many other wines on this list. There is insane value for money here in the Nicolas. And now that we have a strong connection with you, I'm sure that we'll be continuing to buy more of this wine from you. And I look forward to a few more fantastic retrospective tastings with you in future.
Thank you. Yeah, it would be a pleasure for me.
Yeah. Thank you so very much.
Let me see if we have something. This is the last one. All right. So a timeline of big success or big moments that the family or Nicolas awards. For example, he was considered Decanter of the Year by Men of the Year by Decanter magazine in 2009. Lifetime achievement also by it's very difficult to pronounce it, 2011, and then Distinguished Service Award from Wine Spectator in November 2012. So this is like 3 very huge moments and really important for Nicolas as a winemaker and as a person behind the wine. And then as the winery itself, best of the best was considered in the book of Robert Parker in 2010. New World Winery of the Year by Wine Enthusiastic, 2010 as well. Extraordinary Winery Award from Argentina, Wine Advocate. So again, most of the important magazines around the world, they were recognizing the quality and the trajectory of this family. And 2020.
I have to say that the one that jumps out the most to me is the Vivino's recognition for 3 years in a row
Yes.
of the awarded wine. You know, I'm a big fan of Vivino because it's a democratic way of people appreciating and enjoying your wines, as opposed to just a couple of, you know, experts hanging out in a room. I'm a huge fan of what the people think from Vivino, and that's an extraordinary award. I had no idea you guys had that.
Thank you. You know, why for us it's very important, this award, because it was just the opinion of the end consumer. So that's very important. And I think it's great to be there for 3 years consecutive. And you know, in 2020 in April, we get another award, which is the most admired brand for Catena. And that's through the Wine Intelligence. It was like a survey they do with different people from trade and the industry, and they vote. And we get the position number 1, where before it was Penfolds or Torres. So also was really good and important achievement for us. So we keep working on keeping up the quality, preserve Argentina, elevating Argentina as a wine country, and doing our best to produce better wines every year. But also we are putting a lot of effort in the communication that we truly believe is like talking with the people who at the end get the glass and taste the wine and giving an extra information. And I think it helps to really appreciate our wine. So thank you so much for everybody.
Tamara, maybe you can throw the host back to me, and then I can deal with the recording and any last questions for Tamara before she leaves us? There's a question about Adriana. Lou has said we have a small allocation of Adriana, so we're going to be offering that to the database. Maybe what we can do is show the Adriana to the people who are here today as the first allocation, but we'll figure that out once Lou has the pricing sorted out.
Yes, whenever you want, if you would like to go through and detail about some tasting with those wines, I'm happy to do that. I have a very important question for all the people who is here with us today. I want to know which vintage is your favorite and why. So you can unmute yourself, anybody. This is my part. I want to hear that.
Okay, who's going to go first? Yeah, I agree, Ed. It's the 15 and 17 are their trajectory in the glass they're getting better and better. Yeah, I'm with Coq Meng personally with the 16. I just love that flamboyance on 16. I think it's just beautiful. It's glorious. And maybe for me, speaks more of your brand rather than Bordeaux, right? So I think there's something very iconoclastic about that style in the 16. Really beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah, 16 for me. 16 for me, definitely.
Yeah.
Awesome. I love it. I love 16 too. For me, is my favorite. So really delicious. Good.
Yeah.
So Tamara, I have a question for you.
Yes.
Before you leave us, when you're not drinking Prosecco and you're at home, what do you like to drink?
Well, I'm a very fan of Burgundian wines.
Okay.
You know why? I discovered for me, it's very interesting to see like how one grape variety can show so many difference and different characteristics and places. I love blends, and before I was said my first answer is blend wines and Bordeaux. But then when I started tasting a bit more and more and seeing these, different crus or different states in Burgundy, I get crazy because it's only one grape, so you don't play with other things, and it's showing something unique in every bottle. So yeah, that would be my answer.
All right. Well, thanks so much, everybody, for sharing your Saturday evening with us. Next week, we're tasting the De La Graaf wines on Thursday night with the winemaker De Frey, and you're welcome to join us. But there's something happening most Thursday nights online. Thanks again, Tamara, and I'm looking forward to seeing you with us again soon.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity.
Great tasting. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Enjoy the wines.
Send more wine to Robert.
I will. No problem.
Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thanks,
if you
Tamara.
need, you have the presentation. If you wanted to share with anyone, feel free to do it. If you need any extra information about I have so many information of the wines if you need it. So
awesome. Oh, that's great. Maybe you can throw the host back to me, and I'll make a copy of the recording and wrap it up for everybody. I think the last of the Zapata sold while we were tasting tonight, so Lou will be in touch about getting some more.
Awesome. I'm doing giving you permitir hacer anfitrión. Yes.
Perfect.
Cambiar de anfitrión.
All right, done. I got it.
Okay, cool.
Well, thanks so much.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
We'll talk to you soon.
All right.
Good night.
Thank you. Good night. Bye.